Hey, what's up, A-Push kids? We're back for our next lecture in AP US History. Today we're going to be covering topic 9.2, Reagan and Conservatism. Our learning objective today is 9b. Explain the causes and effects of continuing policy debates about the role of the federal government over time. We're going to start off with two key ideas back to back. Now, the first one says, Ronald Reagan's victory in the presidential election of 1980 represented an important milestone, allowing conservatives to enact significant tax cuts and continue the deregulation of many industries. And key idea 2 says conservatives argued that liberal programs were counterproductive in fighting poverty and stimulating economic growth. The 1980s are going to see a rise of a new conservative movement known as the New Right. And we should really kind of think of this opposite of new liberalism, which we really see come into full form with Lyndon Baines Johnson's Great Society. There are four general goals of the conservative movement that you should write down on the left-hand side. And the first one is shrink the size of the federal government and reduce spending. Now, by 1980, the government entitlement programs cost nearly $300 billion a year. And conservatives believed civil rights had gone too far, and they attacked affirmative action and school busing plans during this particular time. In addition to this, the second goal of the conservative movement was to promote family values and patriotic ideas. What we start to see, and this began really in the late 70s, but really comes to fruition with the 1980 election and into the early 80s, is Christians had been disturbed by the decline in morality of the 60s and 70s, hippies, the sexual revolution, etc. And they saw much of this as, kind of destroying traditional family values. The New Right promoted school prayer, tough punishment for crime. They attacked abortion, the Equal Rights Amendment, and the growing open homosexuality movement. They were really led by the man you see pictured on the left. Evangelist Jerry Falwell is going to form the religious group The Moral Majority to promote family values and to raise money for conservative politicians. He'll be joined by other people, for instance, the founders of the 700 Club, a guy named Pat Robinson, who you'll see on TV every so often still to this day. Now, our third and fourth goal of the conservative movement is to stimulate business by reducing government regulations and lowering taxes, and strengthening national defense. Now, conservatives wanted business growth, lower taxes, and free enterprise. Essentially, that's the freedom from government interference in the economy. And the New Right's going to hope to restore the superpower status of the United States. Now, these conservative goals are still in many ways the conservative goals that conservatives still have to this day. Now, Reagan is going to run on a platform of lower taxes, less government, and family values. And he's going to really take advantage of Carter's failures with the economy and foreign policy by asking in a debate, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Reagan really wants to make America great again. I always find that funny. All right, anyways, the 1980 election it's a landslide. Reagan destroys Carter, not only in the popular vote, but certainly in the electoral vote as well. And he really starts to follow through on a lot of his conservative ideologies. He believes that the national government had grown too large and needed to be downsized. He cuts budgets, for instance, by reducing Medicaid and welfare and job training programs. He also believes in deregulation and stimulating businesses, and so he reduces the power of government agencies. He also, during his presidency, is able to appoint 4 conservative justices to the Supreme Court, including its first woman, Sandra Day O'Connor. But by far, the biggest crisis that Reagan will face is the stagflation of the economy. It's still continuing after the 1970s. Now, to solve this, he believed that the government of the 70s, the stagflation was caused by too much government taxes. They were too high and people didn't have enough money to spend. So in 1981, the first full year of his presidency, Reagan is going to urge Congress to pass a 25% tax cut over 3 years to help stimulate spending, increase production, and lower prices. Now, in addition to this, the downsizing government and creating tax cuts, Reagan will increase defense spending in order to restore America's place in the world. However, because military spending increased but tax revenue decreased, the government experienced massive deficits due to this Reaganomics. Now, Reagan's commitment to conservative values and cuts to social programs contributed to growing problems in the 1980s. During the time period, Americans saw increases in school dropout rates, homelessness, attacks, attacks on affirmative action, and urban and minority poverty. In addition to this, the first documented cases of AIDS were reported. Now, the Reagan administration did not move very swiftly because the disease was viewed as among gay men only. Now, Reagan's commitment to conservative values and cuts, that's also led to other programs as well. Crack cocaine was first introduced in the 1980s in the United States, and what became known as the crack epidemic started to ravage inner city neighborhoods. As a result, Nancy Reagan began the war on drugs and the Just Say No campaign during his presidency. However, despite the social and economic problems, Reagan was popular among voters and won re-election in 1984 over Walter Mondale and the first female vice presidential candidate, Geraldine Ferraro. And it wasn't exactly close. Reagan's victory in '84 was powered by a conservative coalition of voters, including many what were referred to as Reagan Democrats. They voted for Reagan for president, but Democrats for other offices. Well, that ends our discussion today on Reagan's domestic policies. Next time we'll talk about what he does in foreign policy around the world. But the big thing to really understand here with Reagan is that we have the true emergence of this new conservative philosophy in the United States to really counterbalance that of the new liberalism that we saw develop between the New Deal to the Great Society. And this really forms the basis for what the Republicans are and the Democrats are today. Well, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, and as always, go Pack.